Welcome back. Today in this video, let us understand about user properties in Azure Data Factory activities. So as you might be aware, when we create pipelines in Azure Data Factory, we will be having different kinds of activities, and you might be seeing something called as user property when in each activities. So we will discuss, what is the need of this user properties and how to enable it, and how actually we can make utilize of it when you're kind of debugging any pipeline, right? So before proceeding, if you're in a learning path about data and haven't yet subscribed for this channel, we would recommend you to please subscribe and also press bell button for instant notifications. So let's get started. So as you can see, by definition, are the what exactly user properties means in Azure Data Factory activities, right? So it basically helps easily filter different Azure Data Factory activities based on a custom property or values. That means when you're kind of debugging any pipeline or you want to monitor any pipeline, right? So there will be a lot of um, activities that will be there, and it will be very difficult in a production scenario where we'll be having a number of copy activities or a number of say lookup activities, but you are not sure which exactly the copy activity that you want to use for your debugging purpose, right? So it becomes very difficult, and you have to check individually, go and check individually for each and every activity output or every activity input to identify which exactly the activity you are looking for. So actually in that case, this user property will comes into picture, and basically you can define these properties manually, that means hard coded, or dynamically in the sense you will be knowing that you can add a dynamic content, right, in Azure Data Factory activities. So basically by enabling that also you can populate this value dynamically. So usually we will use dynamically in most of the cases, but we will see in real time how exactly we will be using this in the in next a few minutes. And example, right, like you might be having a copy activities, like there might be 10 to 15 copy activities that you're using in your Azure Data Factory pipeline, and you are not sure which exactly that the copy activity you want to use for debugging, right? So you'll be having a source and destination table. If you enable the source and destination table as a properties, so then definitely you can refer these properties and identify which copy activity that you are referring to. Similarly, if you're having a number of copy activities and you want to copy the files from source to sync, similarly you can use to identify which exactly the file that which exactly the copy activity that you are referring based on this file name. And also basically generally, usually for monitoring pipelines where there are many activities, right? So it becomes tedious process to kind of identify which exactly the activity that you are referring. So in that case, it will be very useful. We have just given an example for copy activity, but nevertheless, we can use it for almost all the activities in the Azure Data Factory. So next, we will quickly jump into them into demo, and we will see how to enable the user properties and see how exactly it will be useful in real-time scenarios. So as you can see, we will be having a get metadata activity, and we will be having a followed by a for each activity where I'll in the get metadata I'm getting the list of files in a particular folder, and I'm copying each of the files one by one. So if you are not sure about what is get metadata is doing and what for each is doing here, I would recommend you to please watch the previous video to in the same playlist to understand more about this. Basically, at a summary level, we are just copying all the files in a particular folder from source to sync one by one. So as you can see, like each one by one files will be passed. If you see the get metadata activity, we are just kind of it is listing all the files, and each of the files is passed to the for each loop one by one, and it will execute and it will copy one by one files to sync. That is another blob storage in the same. It is another folder in the same blob storage. But that is not of importance here. As part of the user properties, we want to understand, right, what exactly the user property mean. So let us take a typical example of a copy activity. Like as you can see in a user property, basically I have enabled like source and destination. Basically, if I kind of delete this and I can auto generate, if I click on auto generate, it will automatically generate based on the source and sync settings, right? So now what happens when we kind of enable this user property, right? Basically you can give any dynamic content also here, basically like and one more important thing here is you can basically you can hard code the value as per your necessity. So you can remove the value, you can add any values here. And also, as you can see, you can add only 5 user properties. There is a limitation that you can add only 5 user properties. Usually, you can auto generate the values in the like a strict like copy activities and all. We can also see if there is a, if we go to the get metadata and forget metadata, there is no option of auto generate. For copy activity, as you can see, there is a option of auto generate because we have a source and sync, right? So based on that, it actually auto generate a value with that, right? And what happens when we kind of use this kind of a user properties when we enable, right? So that's where the power of user properties come into picture, where we kind of see this difference, right? So the first one, the first run, the debug, basically, if you see, right, there are like 4 copy activities, and out of 4 copy activities I want to identify a particular file name, copy activity of a particular file name where exactly it copied, right? But there is nowhere that information is there. You can see, right, just a copy activity is there, and like there is nowhere the file name is mentioned, and the only option is you have to go and check here, right, the output or input, wherever it is, right? So then we can able to identify some, you can able to get some hint actually which exactly the file is getting copied, but it is not giving the details, right? But when I go to the second run, which I ran after the enabling the user properties on the copy activity, so let us see how exactly it shows. As you can see, there are multiple copy activities, and if I come down, come right side, you can see the user properties are already some banner is showing here, and if you can click here, it exactly shows which exactly the file name or folder name it is targeting. It's a folder name, and if you can see, this is a file. You can see, right, customer v1.csv is a file name. So that file name it clearly shows, and also the destination also it clearly shows from where to where exactly it is copying. And here also it clearly showing, if you just kind of expand this column, it clearly shows which exactly the column or the table if you are using tables. So if there are like, imagine there are like 100 copy activities is being run inside a for loop, so you cannot it is literally impossible to kind of find like a, say like a trades dot table, right, trade table, or like a customer table, so, or an invoice table, right? It is very difficult to find the particular table. In that case, if you just go here and if you can find scroll down, and you'll be able to identify which exactly the table you are looking for, and also you can sort here. So there is option to sort also. So by this we can easily identify and this will be very useful when we are kind of a debugging or kind of a monitoring the pipelines. It will be really helpful. And we have shown the example of copy activity, but let us imagine if you are having like say like 15 to 20 stored procedures, and you want to identify stored procedure of a particular table. Even in that case, so this will be very useful to identify that particular stored procedure. So hope you are able to understand the power of user properties, especially when you are kind of debugging or monitoring the Azure Data Factory pipelines. Thanks for watching.